And then now you're live. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio. No matter how large or small or what age you are, PWTR is here to help you get your voice heard. So contact us at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. And 2 Tuesdays from now, you will see Elizabeth Cook hyphen bamboo on AMFM247.com's TV channel. So make sure you tune in because she is going to talk about the first African American Canadian hockey teams that started in the late 1890s. But she is a descendant of one of the hockey players who played in 1903. So, welcome, Elizabeth. And what can you tell us about being a proud descendant of the first African American hockey player?
Well, it's a long story, and it wasn't until 2010 that I realized that the Maritime provinces here in Canada had a colored hockey league. They were the beginning of what are now more formalized teams, such as your NHL. The colored hockey league were the first when it comes to the butterfly. For those who know that that's that fall down stance the goalies use, and also the slap shot was also first used by the Color Hockey League of the Maritimes here in Canada. The hockey itself has its beginnings going back to the Mi'kmaq people, and their game transpired into what was picked up and carried on by our maritime hockey leagues here that we now are celebrating in this month coming up for African Heritage Month. There were actually a number of teams who formed and were established in 1895. It sounds like a long time ago. It's actually 125 years ago. So it's certainly an honor for our Canada Post here in Canada to honor the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes with a commemorative stamp, recognizing their contribution to the world of hockey.
How long did it take the Canadian government really to recognize that maybe it was time to honor these gentlemen who had the tenacity and also the aggressiveness to get themselves into a hockey team since it was mostly controlled by white people?
Absolutely. For many years in Canada, as in the United States, we have that whole racial divide. And even though the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes started in 1895 and ended around the early 1930s, this particular team was a segregated team when, in fact, racial segregation was over. So you have a team that has no significance in terms of what their accomplishments were, how they led the way for today's hockey. And as we commemorate this 125 years later, I guess it's never too late to write history.
Absolutely not. I think that there are a lot of African Americans who have contributed to our society and culture, not to mention the military and everything else, but have not been formally recognized by any white government because of various and sundry reasons. So we're not going to review how the Civil War was supposed to take care of this or what happened in the Reconstruction down in the States. I do know that a lot of African American slaves didn't run off to Canada to make their home there because they were welcome there. So my point is, were they really welcome there, or they were just merely tolerated by the class of people who were already in Canada?
Well, that's a good point. When we look at the history of the black settlements in Canada versus the black settlements in the United States, we did get that overrun. My own history goes back 8 generations, nine now, where in 18 or 1783, when the ships left New York, with enslaved people for resettlement, some free and many slaves. 3 of those ships landed right here in Cumberland County in Nova Scotia. Many of those people on ship had no last name. So eventually they took on the names of their owners or a name they liked. So when we want to talk about the history of our colored hockey league, I can actually look at our genealogy and go back to where there were people that didn't have a last name, but now are called whatever they're called. So there's a real history. They've come here, they are enslaved, they get sold, they get traded, they become indentured, which was an easier or softer way to talk about slavery. And
Yes.
and they worked their way up, but there was many years where the segregation existed, and the hockey is just an example. Black people couldn't get their hair cut in this community. My dad couldn't, so that's even before his father played hockey. So as a community, you kind of stuck to yourself as Black community, and when you wanted to move over into the white community, you had to know your place. So we had that here. We still have some of it. Where discrimination is never going to be eradicated, but the more we take the time to educate, and hockey, most people love hockey. I have nephews that play hockey. My brother played hockey. We have from our community 4 professional Black hockey players who have played WHA and or NHL who have descendants who were with this team. Little did they know, and we have not celebrated it in the past. So this stamp coming out this year in 2020 is great for our community here in Amherst. This month we will celebrate the commemorative stamp and invite those community members out so they can learn more about their own history.
I think that's great. And I think it's even better that you can trace back to their original roots of where they came from and at least have a name in which they can call themselves. Because a lot of these folks were, of course, sold by their own people, by older tribes, by tribes who who were in cahoots with the Arabians or that point where they also came to enslave the people, so that it's very difficult in some measures to retrace who they are and where they really belong. So who are the people who are, I know your grandfather or great grandfather is one of the people who appears on the stamp. What are the 3 other people there in the stamp? Who are they?
The people that are on the stamp are actually replicas of individuals who either played hockey in the Halifax teams, because they did have actual pictures. We have never been able to find a picture of the actual Amherst Ramblers, although we do have their roster going back to 1900 who played each year. So it's from that roster we were able to pull the names on the actual stamp, and I have the stamp here. On this particular stamp
Okay,
are
just
two
make it a little
players.
more level.
A little.
Yeah, hold it a
Okay,
little
now
more.
I gotta
Okay,
go
get it
all
in the camera. That's good. Get it in
there.
right
Okay.
there. Now a little further up. Great. That's the
Okay. So
thing. Very good.
these are 2 players whose
Okay.
pictures have been designed off the original picture of players, but on the information pamphlet this way.
There. Perfect.
Cool.
Very good. Peek your head around there. Color
This
Hockey
information
Championship.
pamphlet
Awesome.
there. The information pamphlet actually has pictures of, in the background, some of the individuals who are instrumental in setting the team up. James R. Johnson, first Black lawyer, Mr. McKinley, and several other church members of the Baptist denomination who actually started the league. So there are a few people who are actuals, and the rest are caricatures.
And each one of them, you have information telling about them. Now, when the kids want to become hockey players in today's 21st century, can they train with the younger boys? When I was in Michigan, for example, there were 2 and 3-year-old kids out on the ice who were already being trained to become hockey players when they got older, but they had the uniforms on and they had the skates on, and you could see them with the little whatevers and pushing around the hockey thing, the hockey disc, which I thought was kind of cute. But I was just wondering, is it still segregated, or do they take all denominations into
Yes,
their?
all denominations are taken into hockey today. We actually have some very good programs here with the Cumberland County Minor Hockey Association. Some of the younger kids can play for free. Equipment is provided. We have several programs to make the programs more affordable for those who aren't able to purchase their equipment. And the Ramblers, for example, the junior A team in our community, they're very active in doing community events, bringing the younger kids in, showing them techniques and working with them in the summertime. So we offer a lot in that way. We have, like I said, the junior A team here, and then we have the larger teams that play from anywhere from your, I think midget's the top team for the youth. I have a nephew who plays in the midget league. But yeah, we have a lot of kids in hockey today. They're all aspiring to be that superstar that they've seen on TV. I guess PJ Subban, you got him now, but we'll get him back.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I'm not a big
He
hockey fan,
he's
but
a Don
it's
Gretzky kind of hockey player, but the Canadians traded him a couple of years ago. But yeah, we're proud of the kids in this community and the hockey. I think they're going to be very excited when we go into the schools this year to see that hockey didn't just start with Wayne Gretzky. Like, we've had it; it's been here. It's been important part of our community. And now we just need to research a little bit more on the individuals so that we can put a more personal touch to who they were and what they did, and how they got involved in hockey. So we're going to be looking for those stories.
I think that's great because I really believe that when you're teaching these kids, the African American kids or Latino kids, the white kids, they need to have the history with it as well. So it's just not a physical exercise or a physical skill they're learning of how to be a good hockey player, but they can understand what went on, what the African American men did in a time when it really was segregation, whether you wanted to acknowledge it or not, and that they had to overcome great adversity and possibly were singled out by some of the whites as troublemakers for trying to do what they were doing. Lots of times when you read about historical events, they don't really tackle the type of challenges that these men or women had to face in order to go from step one to step two.
No, you're absolutely right. I think being able to talk about the history, explain what had happened, and how we got here. Children, of course, have very inquisitive minds, and I think that's a piece of the education that will carry them through their life, so that they're not being in the situation where they're discriminating against others. I had a relative who recently played in Prince Edward Island last weekend, and was called the N word from the stands by parents. And I'm thinking how tragic. But of course, the team, not the team, pardon me, the organization took it in hand, and they'll take necessary steps. And I think the youth was suspended for the rest of the year, but that doesn't need to happen on the ice. I think people need to go and enjoy the game. Be proud of your children out there and what they're accomplishing, and they need to stop that kind of behavior. But it's still happening.
It is still happening. And that's not the only bad word that you hear. If you're Jewish, I've heard many times they juju, meaning they cheated you out of something. For niggers, they have an appropriate word that means demeaning as well. And I think our society and culture still has a long way to go.
They
And when you hear those words, I told my son, I said, just let it fall on the ground. I said, don't even acknowledge it because they're probably doing it out of fear.
Mhm.
And they have accustomed themselves to a habit in which they're comfortable in. And the fact that you may have something that they or their own children do not have scare them, because according to their thinking, a child doesn't come and bloom the way you do at a property. It's only reserved for the upper class, which is a lot of garbage. But it's the way people think. So you have to change their way of thinking.
No, and even a radio program like you host for your listeners, I'm sure it's educational. There's always something we can all learn. It doesn't matter whether it's hockey or baseball or cooking. There's something to be learned, something to take forward in life that'll make us each a better person.
And I think it makes a big difference. So, Elizabeth, please tell everybody where they can buy the stamp if it's for sale, and where they can find you on the World Wide Web, and any other pertinent information you feel they need to know.
I'm going to let you tell them where they can find me, but I'm going to tell them if they're interested in a stamp, I'm going to put my email address up, or they can contact Canada Post directly. They're not hard to find. The stamp will be available for sale at our event. We'll be handing them out for free. So if you want to come to Canada, to Amherst, Nova Scotia, sometime around February 20th, it's possible.
Okay, you hear that, all your snow bunny enthusiasts? Put your snowboard, take your skis, take your other stuff that helps you walk on the snow. Forgot the name. Go out to Nova Scotia. It's a beautiful island, and there are people that are very, very friendly. And go and buy yourself a stamp or two and put it right next to Martin Luther King, because the two of them are very much attached to each other. One could not exist without the other. Think about it. Martin Luther.
We like to say your history is our history. We're all connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you need to speak out. Now, for those folks who would like to get in touch with Elizabeth, I finally have figured out her email address with a little bit of help. So it's Elizabeth, Elizabeth .Cook, COOKE. Don't forget the E. Now, make sure you put the next dot in, because there is a very famous country singer by the name of Elizabeth Cook as well. Don't get the two confused. That one has blonde hair. And unless Elizabeth Cook Sambu is going to dye her hair blonde, I'm pretty sure you'll see they're very different people. So that's Elizabeth.Cook with an E .Sambu, SUMBU, at CANSAS.ca, which stands for Canada, not California, in case you don't know. And before you go away and stray, a little philosophy here. Walter Benjamin had this to say in 1925: genuine comics approach a book as lovingly as a cannibal spices a baby. Oh, well, we all know what they're saying. Anyway, thank you all very much for joining us. You can see this video all over again on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and on AMFM247.com Tuesday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. and also on https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. Right-hand side, see the menu, go to Cool Your Heels, click on it, and voila, you will see the video there. So thank you all very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this afternoon's interview with Elizabeth Cook Sambu, SUMBU, and share it with your friends. Thank you all very much for listening, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Oh, and you get to do this all over again.